Hello, friends. We made chili crisp.
No, you made chili crisp.
I made chili crisp.
At
Okay.
my urging.
True.
Although it was your idea.
Yeah.
It's taken us a while to get around to it. You a while to get around to it. I didn't mean that in an accusatory way. But it's been a little bit of time. But there's a reason for that.
We keep seeing it at the food co-op. This little jar of delicious looking chili crisp. We got some once.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a little teeny jar for, I don't know, $10 or $12. It's rather expensive.
Yeah.
Cara, as they would say in our Spanish lessons.
Cara.
Cara.
Or maybe it's caro. I don't know what chili crisp is.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, we digress.
So the idea was make your own.
Yeah. But
It just, look at the stuff. It has all these textures and flavors. Mm-hmm.
Lots of different.
Seems complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite complicated. But then I sat down to make it. And you know what?
What?
It was easy. It's
How
super easy.
As easy as pie? Easier than
Way
pie?
easier than pie.
Why do people say that?
To bake a pie. Yeah, pie's a little complicated. We've gotten very good at the pie crust too.
Yes.
That could be another subject here.
It's true. But
Yes.
chili crisp, it has its own kind of intimidation factor.
It does.
And yet, it doesn't need to, because you said, I said, why don't you just get the chili crisp at the store, because it would be really nice on our meal tonight, but you said you're going to make it, and when are you ever going to make it? And then you said, I'm going to make it right now. And I thought, oh, great. It's literally half an hour before we're going to eat dinner. You're going to make it right now. And then
there it was.
You did, and it was poof.
And
it was amazing. It's delicious. It's wonderful. It's way better than anything you can get at the store.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah. The only sad part is that you just made a trial batch because we weren't sure if how it would turn out. Yeah. So
now we have to make more.
What does this have to do with anything?
This is an allegory.
That's what I'm asking. What's the whole point?
An allegory. An illusion.
I don't know.
An aluminium. A. It starts with an A. One of those things that analogy. It compares one thing to another.
Okay.
Or
you an English major or no?
Or uses an example to illustrate.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something else that looks really complicated.
Okay.
And that's any sort of a mystical path.
Ooh, yeah. Just the word mystical implies kind of mysterious, potentially complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, mystical. I mean, it's mystical. You don't just get it.
Yeah.
You have to spend a lifetime.
A lifetime.
Which arguably.
You do.
Okay, wait, we're not making a good
case.
This
is a very long recipe for chili crisp.
Okay, so tell me how the mystical path is like chili crisp.
Well, I think
making chili crisp.
When you think about it, for me, maybe the introduction to the whole mystical path was Zen Buddhism. And you'd read these books filled with incomprehensible koans and read about the Zen masters that would send their student out for a year into a cave to ponder a single question, and then they'd come back and have an answer, and they'd say, "You're wrong, go back to the cave for another year." Whoa!
It actually sounds kind of nice in this modern age. Just to be sent off to live peacefully and quietly while you contemplate. But, I mean, surely they spent some time contemplating the koan, but they probably spent a lot of time just relaxing, swimming in the
crosswords.
lake. No, that's not what I mean. You don't do crosswords in a cave, but just hanging out with nature.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that hanging out with nature. We know that's really nice.
Yeah.
This is another place we could diverge.
Yeah, they probably could have gotten the koan sooner if they hadn't been trying to get the koan with their thinking brain, and they just went into nature. And then they would have come back and they would have held up a leaf, and
it would have all been
the master would be like, "Yeah, you get it."
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, again, another digression. This is making it sound not simple.
That's the trick to that. Just hold up the leaf.
So the first kind of, quote, mystical path that you encountered was Zen Buddhism, and it seemed complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you and I started exploring things together, and there's the Christian mystics. There's the mass of Christianity, and then there's this tiny little part, the Christian mystics, who seem to go without food and do all these other things, and they're
Yeah.
really amazing and have these great insights. But how do they even get there? Who knows? Maybe non-dualism. You go online and you start reading about non-dualism, and wow, it's so heady and can be so kind of over.
A mountain is a mountain, but it's not a mountain, but then it really is a mountain.
And super feel like intimidating again and confusing. And sometimes it almost seems like the mystical paths almost try to make things confusing. Because if my theory is if you sort of get one of the mystical paths and you sort of see that non-dual reality, then you can sound pretty fancy, right? Telling people that when someone says, "Well, I think I've got it a little bit," because I saw, you said I. There is no I.
Right. Oh gosh.
There is no I. No, maybe I'm being a little cynical there, but really, I used to check out those forums a lot, and a lot of that was going on, which just makes things again inaccessible.
It's a complicated chili crisp recipe.
What's interesting, we have that big orange Bible of yoga.
Oh yeah. Can't remember what the title of that is.
Yeah.
It's got some pretty cool stuff in it.
Yeah.
Yoga. But it's very, yeah.
Yoga has a whole bunch of different paths.
Yeah, yoga is not just asanas. That's like
right.
Yeah. It's so way. It's a whole pathway.
There's kind of knowledge paths and service paths and drink your pee paths. And as you look at all those paths, that can look complicated too. But, in that book, they talk about one of the paths being bhakti. And I believe that book highlights that as the most direct path, and in some ways the simplest path.
Yeah.
And that's how I think of bhakti. I think it's why what is that word?
Oh no.
This one starts with an O.
What is it? What's the bottom line of what it means?
I'm going to use an O word and just say organically we transferred over to not anyway, we shifted and moved over to this O word, which so we moved over to this bhakti path,
which is kind of, it's probably maybe not bhakti the way that the yogic traditions 100% outline it. We're not specifically following any path per se, but the one that gets created each day in terms of love and Divine Mother and connection. But bhakti as a defined path seemed, at the time that we discovered it, to be the most accessible. Yeah. Like an easy recipe to fall in love with the world, to build relationships with Divine Mother in all the ways that she manifests. And so maybe that's what we're essentially trying to say, is that being on a mystical path doesn't have to be complicated. And we might think that, oh no, it really is going to be difficult, have all these ingredients, have all these elements, these things they have to follow, but its essence, this bhakti or way of love, is fairly simple and doesn't require a lot of extra bells and whistles.
Yeah. At its heart, I feel like if we can fall in love with the world, and love is a very natural feeling for us after we kind of strip away and look underneath some of our own desires to to have things certain ways and our own desires to own or control things. As we start to move through those things and we start to just fall in love with the world, yeah, the weird thing is that everything else starts to fall together. That a question, who am I? Well, you can't say I because that's the ego, and that's not necessarily something we have to ponder by those traditional paths of saying, you know, what is this? Who is the thinker?
Mm.
Who is the experiencer? Because love, as we fall in love, we immerse ourselves less and less in self. It's a natural thing that happens when we're in bhakti, is that we become less and less rebuilding, right? This ego, this is something that I build and I build up every day and I continue to reinforce. And as I no longer reinforce it, then a shift starts to happen naturally without having to force it or push it. And the same, as I fall in love with the world, I see that selfness start to dissolve in all the things around me. And I see that everything is Divine Mother. As that starts to happen, then some of the things that we are seeking through non-duality come of their own naturalness, just out of love. And love feels good too. It's this experience that we don't have to sit and force. The more we do it, the more it feeds upon itself and grows.
Yeah, it seems that when we can get into that love state, because love, of course, we have to kind of redefine it for ourselves. Our culture has really sort of messed up,
made it into an ownership,
confusing
basically
what love is. And love, in a way, it doesn't have a definition. It is an experience that you can't really put words onto. And I do feel like you're in it when you feel expanded, when you don't feel contracted in your body or your thoughts or your actions towards others. And then I think that's why perhaps we call it all. I mean, are there any actions that aren't really that aren't natural? I mean, we're a natural being, so all of our actions kind of are. However, there are some that are put us in a state that I think is really good for us. And so by natural, I think we kind of mean we perpetuate our own health and our own I'm going to use the word contributions, our own contributions to creating an environment that is healthy for other people as well. And so that maybe to me is what I think of when I think natural. And natural action. It opens me, it deepens me, it unstresses me, and it helps me to create more of that environment and welcome that into my, my space, my bubble or whatever.
Yeah. I think that, and I think that as we, when we talk about it as natural, part of what we're trying to say is that bhakti is the one aspect of our being that we might say that Divine Mother, for instance, is bhakti, is that love. And the reason we say that is that from that bhakti, everything else flows. So as you're saying, when we're immersed in bhakti, I don't have to think about my morality. I don't have to think about eating or living in a way that's healthy for those around me in the world. These things flow naturally out of that experience.
So you're involving the ego mind less, perhaps, that wants to chop things into bits and compare them and decide what's going to be the best course of action. When we enter that state, it flows. Yeah.
And really important that you use that word,
What word? The O word or the A word?
Referring to when you were talking about, you know, our culture's definition of love.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we use this word bhakti sometimes, because love, as our culture puts it forth, is definitely something that I do, right? I love something. It's an emotion that I feel, and it's usually equated with an ownership kind of thing if we really look at it. The bhakti, that's not something that we feel, because the we-ness starts to go.
Yeah, I was
when
gonna
we're so
say,
in
like the
love.
love that our culture has defined separates. It's a separation, and then
Hmm.
there's an interaction of the separation.
Yeah,
Whereas when you get into that bhakti state, there isn't a separation.
yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes it feels difficult to describe, but if you really think of, if you could just fall so completely in love with something, with a leaf, you could fall so completely in love with it, you would no longer be, and not in that way of owning it, having to preserve it, having to just to love it in its current beingness, then that experience, that feeling of love, maybe you can resonate with this, the meanness sort of starts to disappear in there.
Yeah.
It's not again a feeling that I'm feeling. It's a merging. It's a
Yeah.
connection that is
I feel that way
beyond words.
sometimes when I'm in nature, or
Mm.
frequently, where you don't feel like you have to be defined as anything. That question of who am I doesn't. It's kind of like, in some of the koans where they ask the question, but it's not the question. Like the question isn't important, and so it's the same thing. You don't even need to ask that question. Who am I? It's irrelevant. You already feel and know what you are when you're out, sitting and the sun is shining and there's a bird just right in the tree above you and it starts to sing. There's not a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people, especially people who are animal lovers, can experience, at least from, you can have a connection with an animal sometimes where you don't feel that animal really judges you. They're not asking, who are you? And, why are you so grumpy today? And how come this or that? They just adore you. They love you. And, you know, if you can get past the like, okay, you brought in that, whatever dead mouse the other day. um, like we see animals differently. We don't have an expectation in the same way that we would if it was a human being. And so I think really redefining what love is from a thing or even an action into an experience and kind of an unfolding, an unwinding, and an undoing of all of those things. It's really a good practice.
I think this is what makes bhakti like the chili crisp. And an animal, even easier sometimes, a plant like a tree. To recognize that you could go out and sit next to a tree, and right inside of you is what's important, is this feeling of bhakti that, well, you can flow that out to the tree in such a way that something starts to happen, that nothing we can say here will wrap itself around. And you don't need a guru, and you don't need spiritual YouTube videos, and you don't need a sacred text. All you need is you and this feeling of love that surpasses everything, that shifts everything, that
Yeah.
that is everything.
So how do we practice this? Like, how do we begin? What are good ways to connect more to this feeling?
If I sit in front of that tree, and first of all, I go into my senses, and I see the tree, I hear the tree, touch the tree, and start to just be there as much as you can in your senses to experience that tree, that leaf, whatever it is you're experiencing. And then feeling that love. There's a, I mean, I think of the glow meditation that we do in the morning. That I'm not sure if we have, I don't have the meditations on our website yet. We should get those up at some point.
What is wrong with us?
But
nothing really.
We think of first gratitude. When we think of the gratitude, we think of something we're grateful for. I might think of you. But then I try to just feel that sensation. And as I'm sitting there, just experiencing that tree sensorially, is that a word? Then
it is now.
I can start to pour myself out to just feel my love, my appreciation for that, and try to tune into that sensation, that feeling. Because bhakti is this feeling, this sensation that again will transform everything, but it's eclipsed by all these other things. So we have to kind of sit there and just feel it, let it come. Be with that tree for a while. And I have to make some space in my life to do this.
Yeah. That's the tricky part, huh?
Here and now again. Yeah. But luckily that space doesn't have to be huge. I can sit one day for 5 minutes with that tree. Maybe the next day I have 10 minutes to spare and I can sit with that tree. And the next day is super busy. I don't get to that tree at all. But the next day I get a half hour and then 5 minutes the next day. Every time I sit and I immerse myself in that love, it starts to grow and shift and change me. And then, of course, we can take Divine Mother. We can imagine something that is becoming all of these things, then make it a daily practice to fall in love through aspects of Divine Mother. So I can look at you, can feel my love for you, but then also project it out to that feeling or that sensation of Divine Mother. And as I do that, along with that mental construct that she's becoming all these things, then it starts to happen. I feel that love for you, but now I've also put it in my mind that I look over and I see this wooden table here, and I feel that love for that wooden table, and for the spider that crawls along the floor, and for the cloud in the sky that's only lasting for a few moments. And I just fall in love as much as I can over and over. And then just trust that the rest happens naturally.
Yeah.
That I can't love too much. In other words, it's impossible to love too much. We can just fall in love, fall in love, fall in love all the time. The more we do it, the more it gains its own momentum. And the more the things that we were questing after before, those realizations and everything else, start to naturally blossom in our life.
One little thing that I feel sometimes is missing, at least from my life, but maybe from other people's, is the flip side of that, which is to let yourself be loved in that way. So when you meditate with your tree and you're feeling that feeling of the gratitude and the love, to feel it back, to feel the tree, that the tree is sensing you, it's a sensing being, it senses things, and it is sensing you, and it doesn't have a judgment about you. I've talked about this before. The chickadees don't care, our pets don't care in the same way that we carry a caring about how we are, what we look like. There's not a dividing and a comparison. And so allowing yourself to feel that love back from things, from Divine Mother. And I think it's easiest to start in a natural environment. It's easier to start with some things other than humans because humans get caught up and we get caught up along with other humans. But I think sometimes that can be nice just to, put your hands on you and just feel, I am loved, and I'm going to feel some of Divine Mother's love that doesn't have any judgment, and again, also going out to that tree or whatever else it might be and allowing that to flow into you, because sometimes when we experience that feeling ourselves of being loved without a definition, that is really profound. And if we know what that feels like, then we want to flow that back out of us too, and it becomes easier to know what that feeling is.
What a beautiful way to move this along. It can almost be a litmus test. If I think about Divine Mother, that tree loving me, and I think, oh well, yeah, they probably can't love me because of this, I can be pretty sure that I'm bumping into, in my own mind, I'm bumping into these places where I have crystallized aspects of the ego and made up this idea of myself so strongly that I have posited that here it is and it is not worthy of something, of
Right.
love.
Yeah.
And so as we feel loved by the tree, by Divine Mother, then then those feelings again of meanness, they start to get secretly eroded away. Takes time. We talked about it taking a whole lifetime, but maybe that's a little bit of a joke, but it does take time, but it happens naturally, and we can let this go. And the beautiful step, the thing about the bhakti is that every step along the way, we just, even if we just stay immersed in ego our whole life, we become kinder, more compassionate, more loving people along the way.
Yeah.
So it's sort of win-win if we see that egolessness or that total merging with Divine Mother is the grand prize, then along the way are all these other wonderful prizes that we get that aren't just for us, but enrich the people around us. So,
and I mean, that's really it. It doesn't have to be complicated, I mean, if you don't have the ability to go sit by your tree, close your eyes for 20 seconds. Picture it, whatever it is. Because it doesn't, there's not really any requirements other than to just be aware and to do your best to practice.
So love today as much as you can. Try it, explore it. It can't hurt us. It just is, it's kind of good all around.
Wow, that sounds nice.
Yeah. Should we go have a loving day?
I hope so. I'll be doing my best to practice that.
Join us.
Yeah.
Would love to have you do that too, and then share in the comments what your experience was like.
Thanks for joining us.